Some common interview problems. The first is the failure to prepare questions based on the requirements of the job. So what happens here is somebody doesn't look at what you are looking for, your ad, for instance, and looking at what are the qualifications that you spec'd out in that job ad. What is the prior experience? What are the to-dos you're looking for? You know, when you think about that prior experience, the knowledge, skills, abilities that somebody has had. And so you fail to take that in consideration and create some behavioral interviewing questions just to solidify that they have the knowledge, the skills, the experience, and the past emphasis that you're looking for to decide if this is a good candidate or not. And that kind of runs into the very next one, the failure to spend significant time to review the credentials. You know, I'm sure we've all been in an interview where, as the interviewee, we came in, and the interviewer just looked very unorganized. They weren't prepared. They asked questions, but they really weren't germane to the position. And so what happened probably in that instance was the interviewer did not review the resume prior to the interview. They didn't review the application. They just came in thinking that, well, I've interviewed many times before. I can just do this on the fly. And typically, that is not a good practice, because if you really want to maximize the time in an interview and to present yourself professionally and to really get the most out of that interview time, you need to make sure that you spend time reviewing that application or that resume, those documents that you get from your candidate, so that your questions reflect that you have done your due diligence and prepared appropriately. It's a missed opportunity if you don't. And that applies not only to a face-to-face interview, but we also need to think about those phone interviews as well. And I know many of us today are using a phone interview as our first interaction with the employee. It's typically not as long as a sit-down interview face-to-face, but nevertheless, it's critical, because you need to make sure that you're doing that to lessen the time and to lessen the expense of the interview process. So we need to make sure that we are doing our due diligence, again, regardless of the setting, whether it's on the phone, whether it's a video conference, whether it's face-to-face. The next common interviewer problem is asking theoretical questions. You know, what would you do if this happened, as opposed to the behavioral type questions, which is what did you do? You know, theoretical questions aren't necessarily a bad thing, but if all your questions are theoretical in nature, this is where it becomes. The next thing would be the interviewer ignores the applicant's motivation to do the job and to fail to ask how they feel like they would fit with the company values and operations. You know, a lot of times interviewers think, well, you know, I've reviewed the application, the resume, I know this person can do the job. You know, I've done a phone interview and everything sounds good, but when you get face-to-face, that's a time that you can really start to see if this person is going to gel with the culture. And we all know that that is a really, really important piece to this whole interview process, because if somebody's not going to be a right fit for the culture, then they're probably not going to be a good hire for that organization. So again, we need to think about and ask them, why are they interested in the position? Why should we hire you? What type of culture do you feel like you thrive in? What type of culture do you not feel like you do your best work? You know, what about this company interests you? So really get them to talk about what the environment is that they feel like they are best in or worst or not their best in. And again, what motivated them to want to pursue this opportunity with the company that you're representing. The next one is we let our bias and stereotypes affect our judgment. And I know several years ago, I recall a story from somebody that I was working with that was doing a lot of interviewing, and that was when we started to see a lot of tattoos, a lot of piercings, a lot of tongue rings, and the person commented to me that, you know, some of these types of outward jewelry and body art were very distracting in a way that they really couldn't focus on the interview, and it really caused them pause in terms of if this was a good candidate. Again, that was letting their bias and stereotype affect, how they felt about this candidate, because, if they are a good candidate and they can cover up some of the body art, or if they can remove some of the dangling earrings or take out the tongue ring, that levels the playing field, and that's how we should be looking at them. But other biases and stereotypes could even be much more than that. It could be, I really liked the person. This would be somebody that I feel like I could have a friendship with, and so I'm going to hire them. And yet you haven't really qualified to know if they have the best skills and abilities. In fact, they may be somebody that doesn't, but you let your rapport with them and your connection with them override their skills, knowledge, and abilities as compared to some other people that came in. So we need to think about, when we're interviewing people, what bias and stereotypes that we have, if we have some that could negatively impact this interchange, and we need to set those aside and really look at the candidate for what they bring to the table in terms of what we have in terms of a job. The next common interview problem could be that we let the applicant control the interview. And this a lot of times happens with people that are just beginning to interview, although really it can happen to anybody, but we see it most commonly in new interviewers. They haven't had enough experience or thought about how to keep control of that interview. Typically we say an interviewer should be talking about 25 to 30% of the time, and the interviewee should really be talking about 70 to 75% of the time, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get information from them. So if we're doing all the talking, we're not going to really be able to pull that information out to make a good decision. So we need to be prepared with our questions, and we need to make sure that we answer the questions, keep them going, keep that interview flowing so that we can guide the process. The other thing that we need to make sure that we do is we allow for silence. And a lot of times people don't know how to handle that. But think about it. As an interviewer, you are posing a question to somebody that may or may not have an immediate answer, and they may need a moment or so to come up with a good answer. A lot of times people that are doing an interview don't know how to deal with that, and so they will ask the question, and if they don't get an immediate response, they will go on to the next one. When as an interviewer, silence could be your best friend, because think about it as a tennis match. You're volleying a question over the net, they volley an answer back, you volley a question over, they volley it back, and you need to give them that time to set up their serve back. So ask the question, allow for the silence. If they seem to be having trouble, after 15, 20, 30 seconds, you might want to intervene. But don't be too quick to intervene. See how they handle that. See what their response is. I think that's going to give you a good reflection on, how do they handle things in the business setting? How would they handle a question maybe from a customer that they're not comfortable with? So that could be a very valuable asset that you play in that process. The next common interview problem may be failure to conduct the interview in a professional manner. Again, my comment is to treat this applicant like a guest in your home. Make sure when they come in they get properly greeted. Make sure you don't keep them waiting too long. See if they want something to drink. A lot of times as an interviewee, your throat may get dry or you may start coughing, so if they have something to drink, that could help that situation. Make sure that you show them where to sit. Make sure that at the end of the interview process, you professionally walk them back to the lobby or to the doorway they came in, just to make sure that they are treated in a professional manner, because that reflects not only good on you, but it also reflects well on the company.